welcome to another Faith Horizons podcast. Today I'm here with Daniel Geraci, right?
You got it.
All right, I got it right.
Yes.
Okay, finally. All right. Anyway, I had to practice that a few times. It's Jur and then just like
AC.
like Tracy, right?
Yeah.
Geraci. Anyway, Daniel Geraci, and Daniel Geraci is from Austin, Texas, and he runs a disaster relief program called the Austin Disaster Relief Network, and that network has been spanning across America. He's been working in multiple cities, and so we were thinking about possibly setting up a program in Kansas City. So can you tell us a little bit about, welcome, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Can you just tell us a little bit, give us a brief, 3 to 4 minute synopsis of what Austin Disaster Relief Network is?
Yeah. We say ADRN, Austin Disaster Relief Network. We've been around for 14 years. The Lord put in my heart this model of pulling churches together, training the body of Christ, and mobilizing them when crisis strikes. And the model's been incredibly effective for the greater Austin area for the last 14 years. Prior to ADRN forming, in the 100 years prior to that, there had been a total of 9 disasters, major disasters in the city. Since forming, over those 14 years, there have been a total of 16 disasters.
Oh, wow.
And 3 of those catastrophic, 7 historic, and the rest major. So
Wow.
It's been a very busy season in Austin. We're actually the 4th most disaster-prone city in the nation now.
Wow.
Tied with Houston for number 4. So it's not build it and it will come. I believe it. The Lord so loves people that He will have His church ready and mobilize and prepare His church. That way we can become the best asset that the city has when crisis strikes. And that's really what we want, is the position of the church to be the hero, not the ministry, but the church. So multitudes coming into the kingdom through it.
So Austin, the ADRN helps churches come together. They help facilitate churches so that they can be prepared to be the best resource possible when a disaster does strike. Right?
Yeah, and really the training is key, knowing what to say, what not to say. So we
talked
them.
about that. Yeah, that's really important.
Emotionally, spiritually, and physically. There's many facets, right, to get involved with a disaster. But we want the church to really know what to do, how to do it, what to say, what not to say, and really the spiritual component of it. When is it the right time to share my testimony, so to speak, about the Lord? And it's key.
Even though we had most people would consider a disaster a very big problem. When we were talking together, I just kept hearing, man, a disaster is an incredible opportunity for the church to represent Christ well.
Yes.
It's an incredible opportunity. And also, if you read books like, Tribe, it talks about how the greatest community happens, when a disaster strikes.
Yes.
People coming together, helping one another. We get to see the best of each other.
Yes. For the body of Christ, this is something we always have wanted, right? We don't like the division and the different denominations. And I see it and hear it all the time. No one is asking what church you were from when you're wearing the same color, same shirt.
Nobody cares.
We're doing it together. But on the flip side, as a survivor, and usually we see about anywhere from 65 to 70% of the survivor population is unchurched. They're going, I never knew the church was this good. And they're usually asking, what church is this? And we just say, not a church, but the church. And that's just incredible. And what it does is it moves the heart of people. Their old view of the church isn't like what they were told. It's like, I didn't realize y'all were this good. And ultimately, it leads them to the Lord.
Yeah, because you had talked about that too, about how the church, at least in Austin, was kind of like secluded out of the disaster program for a while because we had maybe overstepped, our stay for a bit. Just tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, I found out in the very beginning that from the leadership of the government that the church is the second disaster when a disaster strikes, because
it's the second disaster.
That's what they say. They always say it. It doesn't matter where I'm at, what city, it's not good, not a good reputation, because what happens is we have good hearts. Because we don't have the training, we put our foot in our mouth, In Austin, our own story is that a handful of pastors went into the convention center when Hurricane Katrina struck. The New Orleans area. It sent 6,000 people to Austin, evacuees into
Wow.
our convention center, and a handful of pastors went in there and said, "You're here because of your sin." When Austin leadership heard that, they say, "Don't let the church back in." And for years, the church was not allowed to help evacuees. And the interesting part of the story is that, after those 6,000 were assisted, then Gustav hit the Gulf area, and that brought another several thousand into
Wow.
the
Wow.
city. And then Rita hit several thousand, and then Ike hit, and a total of 44,000 people were
That's
evacuated into our
incredible.
city over a 3-year period. And the city couldn't say hello to one of them in the shelter. So it was, it
You mean
shows
the
you.
church could not say hello to one of
The
them?
church is not allowed to come into the shelter and be the church and help those families get back on their feet because of what had happened in 2005.
That's incredible. So after that, you said that the walls kind of came down because you were able to present them with an offering that.
Yeah, we approached the city and Red Cross and said, "How do we serve you?" And they said, "Wow, no one's ever asked us from the church, how can we serve you?" They just
Wow.
came at us at a posture of, "We're the church, let us in."
Wow.
And it turned them off. Really what they wanted was they wanted our people to be trained. They want us to help run the operations. It was the very opposite of what we were experiencing. And so it came, because we came with humble hearts. And really, that's the posture church needs to take. Plus, they want to work with the church versus multiple churches. Because when disaster strikes, you don't have a lot of capacity. The government does. And they would rather have one central ministry to communicate through, to collaborate through, in order to be able to mobilize that many volunteers. So it works so beautifully, not only for the church, but for the government in the city.
Absolutely. So you're the founder of this organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
ADRN. And so what put this on your heart?
Well, in 2005, when Katrina happened, I was just involved. I was actually selling oil and gas at the time. And suddenly, in a flash, while helping survivors come out of the convention center, the Lord gave this vision, and in just a moment, wrote it on a napkin where I could see the greater Austin area, broke it up into 12, what we call now sectors, and the way that we would build infrastructures within churches, we call them DRC and core team,
Yeah.
to help pull the weight off the pastor and build a great team within every church to mobilize volunteers to help them get trained when disaster strikes. Because what you don't want is the church, the staff, to suddenly get involved in that crisis, because they really need to be the church and be who they are to their own people, to the community. So that way, this small group called a DRC and core team, given mobilizing volunteers, it's just the plan that the Lord gave us. And then we added emotional, spiritual care training, which has been key. And the number one goal for the Church of Greater Austin is to walk with families to help them get back on their feet, like the Lord told us in the Good Samaritan parable, which is really where the most salvations and people begin to, really be encouraged by who the church is, because they usually ask the question, "Why do you do this? Why are you doing this?" Like as if there's something up our sleeve. And they're not used to this level of love. And it's really what we're reflecting is his beauty. And when that beauty is revealed, they cannot but fall in love with it. And that's when we see lots of people come to Jesus.
Yeah. And, in this way, we don't actually have to be pushy with the gospel.
No. They want to know, like,
Yeah.
why are you so joyful? Why do you
Yeah.
have so much peace in the midst of crisis? Tell me more.
So that was one of the things that you had mentioned that was really a very serious point about what you do is you train people not to ask the wrong questions
Yeah.
while they're engaging with a person who's just left their home for a fire or a flood or for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, it's the ABCs of emotional care. We call it the duct tape model. That's the best thing you can. If any of your listeners listen now and you know someone that just went through crisis, the best thing you do is say, "I'm so sorry," and then listen. Don't talk, no matter, even though you so badly want to share what happened to you and how it happened. That's the worst thing you could do. What will happen in that survivor, whoever it is that you're helping, they'll say, I'm done with this, let's move on to
Yeah.
something else, and you'll lose, that relationship or that moment.
So one of the things, another thing that must be noted is you said is that whoever has the list runs the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So a lot about what we were talking about, just recently was the the information gathering. Information
Yeah.
gathering is key
Yeah.
to begin to help these people. You need to know their names. You need to know where they lived at, and then what help they need. Right.
Yeah, yeah, the information gathering, we use it through what we call our CISM team, or Critical Incident Stress Management team. They're trained to provide the emotional, spiritual care to help families come out of trauma. So it starts off with, tell me what happened,
Okay.
and then you're listening. But in that, we're taking their information, and then ultimately, after we gather all the information, we say, would you like a church on the network to walk with you through this terrible
Okay.
crisis? But that list, now we compile all of that together. Now we have the list of lists, which no one else is pulling together. I can almost guarantee it. There are ministries that might have small lists of small bits of information and maybe muck out a house, but not the kind of information that's needed to walk with a family and to get them the kind of resources they need. That list now will help me go to Samaritan's Purse and say, hey, I have 100 roofs that need blue tarp. That list will help me be able to go to other ministries and begin to pull resources together. And what happens is the survivor and the city begins to see these guys have it together. And it really, again, the hope is we want the church to be relevant in that city, right? And suddenly the city starts depending on now the church more than ever, which is exactly what you want. It's a complete 360 turnaround from what most cities view the church as.
Yeah, because we had talked that the church in general has taken a significant back step to
Yes.
helping in these areas, and we need to retake the ground we had past given up.
Yeah, even in Isaiah 2, it says in the latter days, the church will be on top of the mountains. And I believe the mountain of disaster relief, why not own all the disasters in your city? Because it's a way to
That's
get
so
volunteers
true, yeah.
engaged and mobilize the church and begin a process of developing great relationships with the city government.
Yeah, it's such a helpful thing too. So you facilitate the coming together of all of the different churches, right? By coming up with a list, and then you're helping them, the survivors of this, go through the trauma part of it, and then also maybe have the resources they need, such as a refrigerator or a couch or a bed. And so you bring all those resources together, or you are able to basically sell the need to all these other different organizations, right?
Correct. And we're also getting their information to walk with them, what we call shepherd. So we're equipping the body of Christ. We have a training that teaches the body how to shepherd a family or walk with a family. Some might call it sponsor, but I feel like the word shepherding is probably a better qualifier. But it's like being a good Samaritan and walking with those families. We will also, if it's a lot of homes that need to be rebuilt, we begin to work with those teams like Christian Aid Ministries, Samaritan's Purse, and others that come in with teams.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
see, now we have the information they need to move faster to rebuild homes. Sometimes I've seen it take as long as 6 months to get all the
Wow.
information together versus we're talking about 3 weeks
Yeah.
to be able to start swinging a hammer. So it shortens that time. Also, when I'm talking to the business community and to donors, they're seeing how sharp and together these people are. So money starts pouring in. Again, the ultimate is that it's putting the church in a leadership position. And this is what our ministry does now. And you had mentioned, I have founded the Austin Disaster Relief Network. What we're doing now is I've raised up a new nonprofit called United in Crisis. United in Crisis is taking that crisis response model that the Lord gave in 2005. It's been tested and proven over 14 years with lots of disasters, right? And then also we're now equipping other cities, whether they're in a disaster, we go in there to help form a new
Yeah.
network, or it's blue sky, like in Kansas City. We're coming here to the churches proposing the idea of what if Kansas City had its own Kansas City or Greater Kansas City Crisis Network. in advance, prepared and trained, so that way the church could be powerful and relevant when crisis strikes, and maybe own all the disasters or crisis in the city.
Wow,
And
that's
it
so
doesn't
true.
just have to be a natural. Could be the homeless crisis. Could be other things that model will work beautifully in because of the infrastructure that is set up through the model.
That actually is really good because then, like that, like you're saying, you can sell the problem to business owners, and you're talking about even s- individual families being sponsored. You know, like we see like organizations like World Hunger. You know, they're actually sell. Hey, this person needs this. Can you sponsor them? Can you sponsor this person? Can you sponsor this person? So you're gathering the information to
Yeah.
where you can sell these individual families unique problems to like business owners, or churches want to donate, or if church members want to donate to these
Yes.
individual problems. But that you've broken down the very large problem into small bite-sized chunks so we can all begin to devour this thing
That's
together.
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we, when you have a network that operates like this, we also, prior to them joining, a church joining, we collect their information of what do they do. Well, they've got a clothing ministry, or they
Yeah,
have
that's so good.
buses, or they have warehouse space. And so when you times that by maybe 100 churches in the city, I now know the resources. And imagine going up to the government saying, these are the tools, these are the people that are trained in advance, their badge, credential. I mean, it's a dream come true
It is,
for
really,
any
yeah.
city government.
Yeah.
That's why suddenly, and it's kind of a no-brainer when you think about it. You might say, why haven't we done this before? And that's really the question is, why haven't we? And let's do it. So
Absolutely. So we're gonna have to start winding down because we're running out of time, because I know you have somewhere else to
Yeah.
go. So how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to get a hold of you? Not get a hold of you, but how would they donate to the organization or learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. So United in Crisis, then go to our website, unitedincrisis.org. So that's the national/international version of, taking the model, again, helping other
Yeah.
cities do it. They can always go to, if they want to just hear some stories and watch some videos, cool videos, how the church has moved, they could go to ADRN.org. But our website is just simply unitedincrisis.org.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And our contact information is there. If you are a pastor listening to this, I would say go to Howard Cordell, or they can reach out to me simply at daniel@unitedincrisis.org, and I'd be happy to respond, talk to them.
And Howard Cordell is a local Kansas City, right?
He is the president of the Midwest, I want to say Pastors Fellowship, I think it might be, but it's about 300 some churches,
Oh, wow.
part of that ministerial alliance. Oh, that's it, Midwest Ministerial Fellowship. That's
Wow.
what it's called. Yeah, and there are a great amount of churches on that. If they're not connected, I'd say get connected. Do you want me to tell a 2-minute God story?
Yeah, I was gonna ask is if you have time, let's just do a short story, because I mean, story
Yeah.
always brings everything together.
Yeah. So this is a story of just His goodness, right?
Yeah.
A story also of how God, when churches simply follow what's important on His heart. That's John 17, that we would be one. That the Lord shows up. It commands a blessing, Psalm 133, when the brothers dwelt together in unity. So when Harvey happened in 2017, we're talking about catastrophic event, not only impacting Houston with over 100,000 families displaced, but Rockport and 32 other cities
And where
all
was
across South.
Where did Harvey happen at?
In
again?
Texas, South Texas,
South Texas.
on the coast. And so very major impact. There wasn't not enough nonprofits to handle every city. The Samaritan Purses of the world, the Convoy of Hope, all those. So we picked Port Arthur because no one had hit Port Arthur yet. They had over 7 feet of rain fall in a short period of time. Anyone closest to that was Noah's flood in recorded history.
Oh,
no one
my
had that
gosh.
much rain.
Did you
recorded
say 7
history.
feet, right?
Yeah, over 7 feet
Oh,
of
my gosh.
rain.
Like police cars,
yeah.
you said something like that.
The whole
Everything,
town,
everything.
95% of the town was
Wow.
impacted. So people were desperate, and we felt the Lord said, don't go out in your normal way. It's going to take 1,000+ volunteers.
Wow.
So we, in 10 days, we were asked by the mayor to deploy. The Lord pulled together 9 semis of goods and supplies, over 1,000 volunteers, 20 buses to deploy those volunteers. brought $1 million in gift cards because the donations poured in. We had a area where we had the jump bouncy houses. One church owned that. I think we brought down 5.
Wow.
So that way all the kids could be, because they
occupied.
They
Yeah.
too need to have fun. And for the kids to be debriefed at the disaster, we had a drawing area where they drew what happened.
Oh my
and then
gosh.
we said, where was God in that? And they would point to God in that. And sorry, that's my alarm. I'll give you one more minute of that story.
I figured.
So, but in the midst of that, we had 9 semis of supplies and goods. We had 2 circus tents, and then we had a drive-through where they could drive through, get the stuff, and they can also pick up stuff in both areas. And we had everyone scheduled in, so we thought we were
Wow.
really ahead. We didn't know how many; we just knew thousands of people would show. We ended up having 13,000, like 600 people, 13,600 helped in one day. We gave away all $1 million or close to it, and at first, the one mistake we made was we didn't tell them, don't show up until you're 15 minutes before your time. Just that one statement we found out.
These 13,000 people that came in one day,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, 13,000 people that needed help.
We had
Yeah,
200
yeah.
computers set up to take intake.
That's
It was
incredible.
a massive
Yeah,
setup.
yeah.
But when that morning there was already 1,000 people lined up.
Yeah.
Too many, maybe 2,000. We were going to handle 800 per hour is
Wow.
what we had figured out, the way we had it set up. And unfortunately, because we didn't say don't show up, it became kind of wild out there. And
You
so-
have the water and I want it.
and the
Anyway.
police were not around. We could not
Wow.
get, because their
Jeez.
houses were impacted.
Oh my
So we could
gosh.
only find one police officer, but the Lord sovereignly, divinely protected. And I had to go outside. No kidding. I had to lead them in a prayer in this mass crowd and ask the Lord through their lips to show up and give them peace. And it did. It calmed down. We brought them in, and it would turn out to be a historic event. We had a prayer tent also, and people were walking around with prayer team, praying for people in tears, kids,
Wow.
being restored, families being pulled out of their trauma. I just had never seen the body work so well together. And we ended that night in the stadium, because we used a high school and a middle school that were combined back-to-back campuses, where we had it was like a 10,000 seat stadium. Texas football's big.
Yeah.
So this is a big stadium. We had all these people in the stadium. We ended up lifting the name of the Lord up that night
Wow.
in a prayer meeting, asking God to come and bring restoration to this community
That's
with
incredible.
pastors and churches and the people and the 1,000 volunteers. And then we took a bus home, and I don't think we got home till like midnight, something like that. But it was an amazing day of glory for the Lord, and it was a blessed day. You can go to the website, our ADRN website, find that video somewhere there. But anyway, that's our story. He's good all the time. He makes you look like you know what you're doing.
Well,
That's his signature.
Well, yeah, just thank you so much for being a part of the Faith Horizons show. I know that you've got another appointment today while you're in town in Kansas City. So thank you for joining us.
Amen. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. Keep praying and look out for the Greater Kansas Crisis Network on how you can volunteer, be a part of your church, be ready to join as a church on the network because it's coming near you.